She praises other men. She does it in front of you, with a sparkle in her eyes, with a casual tone, sometimes even with deliberate exaggeration, as if to make sure you noticed. Another man's brilliance, another man's strength, another man's wit. She places him in the spotlight, while you are left in the shadows. And in that moment, a blade cuts into your chest, not through flesh, but through pride, through the ancient seat of masculine worth. You feel it, the tremor in your soul, the cold fire of comparison, the panic that maybe, just maybe, she is signaling something that you are not enough, that her admiration can wander, that her loyalty is fragile, that your place in her universe is conditional, precarious, threatened. And in that moment, you ask yourself, why does she do this? What is the hidden logic? What is the test hidden behind this praise of other men? And how should a man respond? This is where Friedrich Nietzsche enters, not as a dusty philosopher scribbling abstractions, but as a man who saw through illusions, who stripped the human game of its veils. He understood that admiration, loyalty, desire, they are not anchored in sentiment, they are anchored in power. And so, his answer is not warm, not conciliatory, not reassuring. His answer is cold, sharp, decisive. The man who clings, the man who begs, the man who collapses under the weight of comparison, he is already defeated. Nietzsche's message is this: if she praises another, let it strike you like a hammer. Do not whimper. Do not seek comfort. Stand like ice. Because admiration, once begged for, is already lost. The thesis is brutal, but liberating. The only response to her test is sovereignty. The refusal to be moved. The embodiment of cold power that reveals to her and to yourself that you are not in competition, because you have already transcended the arena. Nietzsche's philosophy was anchored in the recognition that human beings are driven by the will to power, the fundamental, relentless force that surges beneath every gesture, every word, every glance. When a woman praises another man in your presence, she is not merely commenting. She is invoking the will to power. She is creating a battlefield, a contest, a space where dominance and self-possession are silently measured. She wants to know, does your strength collapse under comparison, or does it rise above it, untouchable, sovereign, unimpressed? Nietzsche would say, she is not testing your knowledge of the rival's qualities. She is testing the metaphysical weight of your presence. Most men fail to see this. They hear her words, and their inner monologue explodes in chaos. They imagine betrayal. They question their own value. They start to defend, to argue, to subtly attack the man she praised, to fish for reassurance. And in doing so, they reveal weakness. They show that their worth is dependent on her approval, that their center is fragile, that their soul is not sovereign. This collapse is not attractive, it is contemptible. But the sovereign response is another universe entirely. Nietzsche's answer is ice cold, because it does not flinch. It does not bend. When she praises another man, the sovereign man does not compete, does not complain, does not chase. He looks into the storm without a tremor. His silence is heavier than her words. His gaze communicates, I am beyond comparison. That man may be admired, but I am inevitable. And this indifference is not an act. It is not a tactic. It is the manifestation of a deeper truth, that his value does not hinge on her shifting affections, that he is self-contained, a world unto himself, a source of gravity that does not beg, but commands. And here lies the perception shift. What seems like a threat is, in fact, a stage. She is not only testing your ego, she is testing your essence. She wants to know if you are anchored, or if you are a leaf blown by the winds of comparison. If you are sovereign, her praise of other men only rebounds against your armor. She sees that you are not shaken, and in that recognition, something deeper awakens her admiration for you. For the man who cannot be dethroned by words. For the man who, in Nietzsche's terms, embodies the Bermensch, the one who creates his own value, who does not wait for approval, who does not shiver at the shadows of rivals. But how does this law manifest in the brutal theater of modern romance? How do her subtle gestures, her innocent-seeming praises, transform into arenas of dominance, loyalty, and revelation? The answer is more unsettling than you imagine. When a woman praises another man, she is not only speaking of him, she is speaking of you through the mirror of absence. She is saying, without saying, "Show me what you are made of. Show me if you can withstand the weight of my gaze when it shifts. Show me if your kingdom collapses the moment I mention another king." This is not cruelty, though it feels cruel. It is instinct. It is the primordial mechanism of selection, sharpened by millennia of survival. In the ancient tribes, women gravitated toward the strongest, the most unshakable, the one who could command respect even when rivals appeared. Today, the words may be subtle, the context social rather than savage, but the instinct is the same. She is still asking, "Are you the man who bends, or the man who rules?" The common man interprets this test as an insult, as disrespect, as betrayal. His blood boils. His pride bleeds. He erupts. He challenges her. He demands reassurance. He pleads for validation. Or worse, he turns his aggression toward the man she praised, poisoning his own spirit with jealousy. In each of these responses, he reveals his hand. He reveals that he is reactive, not sovereign. His mood depends on her words. His confidence is conditional, borrowed, flimsy. And the moment she sees that, something irreversible occurs. A seed of doubt is planted in her soul. She may not admit it, even to herself, but she knows this man is not the unshakable force she yearns for. The Nietzschean man responds differently. He understands that life is war, that every interaction is infused with the will to power, and that the battlefield of romance is no exception. When she praises another, he does not crumble. He does not need to win the comparison, because he refuses the premise of comparison itself. He embodies the stance. There is no rival. I do not enter contests, because I am the measure. His calmness, his refusal to explain, his silence that is heavier than speech, these are not tricks. They are the radiance of his inner throne. This coldness unsettles her, shakes her more than his jealousy ever could. Because deep down, she wanted to see if she could reach the roots of his soul. And when she discovers that his roots go deeper than her tests, she feels both frustration and awe. The perception shift, then, is brutal in its clarity. Her praise of another man is not about that man at all. It is about you. It is about whether you are a man who dissolves under pressure, or a man who grows sharper in the storm. When you stand as ice, you transform the test into proof. She realizes that her words cannot move you from your throne, and paradoxically, that immovability draws her closer. Because women, though they may not articulate it, crave the gravity of a man who is sovereign. Here we must pause. What has been revealed so far can be condensed into a single brutal truth. Every test is an invitation to reveal whether you are sovereign or subordinate. She does not need you to destroy rivals. She needs you to prove that rivals do not exist in your universe. But the question deepens, the stakes sharpen. If sovereignty is the law, how does a man cultivate it? How does he train himself to embody this icy response when the fire of jealousy rages within? Can a man truly stand unmoved, or does he fake indifference while secretly breaking inside? The next stage of this revelation is where philosophy ceases to be theory and becomes blood, muscle, and bone. To embody sovereignty is not to deny the sting. When she praises another man, you will feel it in your chest. The spark of jealousy, the ancient ache of comparison, the primal fear that your place in her world is slipping. To pretend this does not exist is to lie, and Nietzsche would laugh at such cowardice. He did not preach the suppression of instincts, but their transmutation. The raw materials of pain, envy, and fear are not to be buried. They are to be forged. The man who collapses under them is broken. The man who ignores them is hollow. The man who takes them into the furnace of his will and emerges sharper, that is the sovereign man. This is why Nietzsche spoke of becoming what one is. Not pretending, not wearing a mask, but cultivating the kind of presence where the test does not destabilize you, because you have already done the work of building your inner throne. To stand like ice in the face of her praise for another man, you must have bled in solitude. You must have stared into the mirror and seen your flaws without flinching. You must have faced failure, betrayal, humiliation, and not allowed them to define you. For every sovereign response in the theater of romance is backed by 1,000 silent battles in the shadows of your life. The common response collapses precisely because it is rooted in insecurity. The man who has not faced himself cannot bear to face comparison. He will grasp, beg, attack. He will try to extinguish the rival's flame rather than cultivate his own. But the sovereign man does not extinguish. He radiates. He radiates so fiercely that comparison evaporates. She may praise another's wit, another's success, another's beauty, but she feels in her bones that you are not touched by it, that your value is not up for debate, that you are not threatened because you are threat itself. This is the essence of Nietzsche's ice, the calm cruelty of a man who has already transcended the battlefield of validation. But this response, this coldness, must never be confused with indifference. It is not apathy, not numbness, not a hollow act of pretending not to care. It is deeper. It is the discipline of power, a power that chooses not to react, not because it feels nothing, but because it refuses to grant others the authority to move its center. That is the secret. She tests you not to see if you are jealous, but to see if you are ruled by jealousy. She wants to know if you are master of yourself or slave to your instincts. And when she discovers you are master, the game changes. The perception shift here is seismic. What seemed like a test of her affection is actually a test of your sovereignty. What seemed like a game about men outside of you is really about the man within you. She praises another to measure the fortress of your soul. And if that fortress is real, if your walls are unshakable, if your silence cuts sharper than any jealous retort, then you pass the test without speaking a word. In that passing, you do not just keep her admiration, you amplify it. Because women, at the deepest level, are drawn to the man who cannot be dethroned. Now we stand at another threshold. The truth is visible, the pattern undeniable. Yet the question looms, if this is the law, how can a man live it daily? How does he transform jealousy into strength, insecurity into sovereignty, reaction into cold command? The next revelation demands we go further into the mechanics of power, into the psychology of transformation, into the precise architecture of becoming the man whose silence is heavier than the praise of 1,000 rivals. The answer is waiting. But are you ready to face it? To live this law daily, you must rewire your very relationship with power. Most men mistake power for dominance over others. They imagine it as crushing rivals, silencing her, or forcing loyalty through control. But Nietzsche understood something more ruthless and more liberating. True power begins as dominance over oneself. The battlefield is inward before it is outward. If you cannot govern your reactions, you are already conquered. If her words can shatter your mood, she owns you. If another man's name can rattle your composure, then your sovereignty is illusion. So the first discipline is silence. Not passive silence, not the silence of retreat, but the silence of command. When she praises another man, your first instinct may be to speak, to defend, to demand. That is the weakness of the untrained. Instead, you must let the silence stretch, not as emptiness, but as weight. This silence communicates without words. I am not in the game of comparison. I am the arena itself. And in that moment, you reverse the polarity of power. What began as her test of you becomes her realization of herself. She feels the futility of her attempt to destabilize you. And in that futility, her respect deepens. The second discipline is presence. Not the shallow presence of being physically there, but the deep gravitational presence that Nietzsche associated with those who had forged themselves into creators of value. Your posture, your gaze, your very breathing must speak sovereignty. When she mentions another man's wit, you do not compete by telling a sharper joke. When she praises his success, you do not scramble to advertise your own. Your presence is the unspoken declaration. No man can outshine me, because I do not shine by comparison. I shine by nature. This presence cannot be faked, it must be cultivated, which means you must live in such a way that your life itself radiates authenticity, that your achievements are not masks, but manifestations of your will to power. The third discipline is transmutation. Jealousy will strike, it is inevitable. You are human, and the primitive circuits of competition run deep. But the sovereign man does not suppress jealousy. He alchemizes it. He takes the sting and transforms it into fuel. Instead of resenting the rival, he allows the comparison to sharpen him. He asks, what in me remains undeveloped? What strength can I cultivate further? How can I ascend higher, not to prove to her, but to prove to myself that I am inexhaustible? This is the Nietzschean path, to take even the most painful instincts and use them as stepping stones toward greatness. And the fourth discipline is refusal. Refusal to collapse, refusal to explain, refusal to play the slave's game of reassurance. When she praises another man, your refusal to seek validation is itself the throne. This refusal is not arrogance, it is sovereignty. Because the moment you ask, but what about me? Do you still admire me? You have abandoned your throne. You have confessed dependence. The sovereign man does not ask. He commands respect not through demand, but through existence. The perception shift crystallizes here. The true arena is not her words, but your response. She can praise another endlessly, but the test is eternal. Are you anchored, or are you swayed? If you are anchored, then her words dissolve against the granite of your presence. If you are swayed, then no amount of her reassurance can save you. For once she sees that your core is weak, her admiration, though she may try to maintain it, withers in silence. This brings us to the brutal checkpoint of this journey. Everything so far collapses into one cold revelation. Sovereignty is not optional. If you do not master yourself, she will expose you. If you are not the unshakable center, she will test until the truth is revealed. And the open wound of this truth demands a new question. If every interaction is a battlefield of sovereignty, then what does it mean to live as a warrior in the endless theater of tests? How does a man construct his life so that every glance, every silence, every response radiates unassailable command? The next revelation leads us deeper into the architecture of the sovereign life itself. To construct a life of sovereignty is to architect yourself as a fortress. Every thought, every habit, every pursuit becomes a stone in its walls. You do not merely react to her words, you anticipate, you integrate, you transcend. The man who cannot be shaken by her praise of others has cultivated an inner world so vast, so self-sufficient, that no comparison can penetrate it. This is the Nietzschean ideal realized, the bare mensch, not as abstraction, but as living, breathing, unassailable presence. Begin with mastery over attention. The common man allows external voices, her voice, the echo of rivals, social comparison, to dictate his emotional landscape. The sovereign man redirects attention inward. He observes her words without being governed by them. He notices the praise, registers its existence, but does not assign it weight over his own measure. This requires ruthless practice, meditation on presence, deliberate reflection on value, daily affirmation of the self independent of external validation. In this discipline, you forge immunity. The praise of another man becomes data, not threat. Observation, not reaction. And in this, you reclaim the battlefield of the mind itself. Next, cultivate unshakable purpose. A man without a life of direction is easily destabilized. Her words, her praise, the antics of rivals, they can penetrate emptiness because emptiness is vulnerable. Nietzsche teaches that purpose is power. When your life is consumed by a mission that aligns with your will, external fluctuations are insignificant. Her praise of another man is merely a ripple on the ocean of your ambition. You are moving in currents far deeper, far stronger, far older than any social test. This is why sovereign men appear untouchable. They are tethered to eternity, not to fleeting admiration. Then comes the cultivation of emotional transmutation. Every spark of jealousy, every tremor of inadequacy, every surge of desire to compete must be harvested and redirected. The sovereign man does not deny his instincts. He elevates them. He uses every stimulus as fuel for improvement, for strategic growth, for refinement of self. The compliment she gives another is not poison. It is a forge. The pain it stirs is the hammer. The fire of competition becomes internalized, not externalized, and from it emerges a man tempered in solitude, in struggle, in unwavering commitment to his own becoming. The final pillar is presence in silence. The moments when she praises another are the crucible. Your response, or lack thereof, must carry the weight of inevitability. Speak less, move deliberately, radiate gravity. Let her words fall like pebbles against stone. Let her admire, let her test, let her measure. All that matters is the unshakable stance you inhabit. Nietzsche's lesson is clear. Force is visible, but sovereignty is invisible. Its power lies not in noise, but in constancy, in permanence, in the quiet knowledge that your value is self-generated, unassailable, immutable. Now, consider the perception shift in its totality. She may praise 1,000 men, highlight their wit, flaunt their successes, linger on their accomplishments, but if your presence is sovereign, she cannot move you. She cannot destabilize you. She may feel frustration, curiosity, attraction, confusion, but she will also feel the gravity of inevitability. Her admiration deepens not because you compete, but because you cannot, not because you respond, but because you exist. The lesson is brutal and liberating. Sovereignty is not reactive. It is foundational. It is not earned through argument, charm, or conquest. It is embodied through the relentless cultivation of self. This is the final edict. Every test, every praise, every gaze, every word that threatens your equilibrium is not a challenge to her, but a revelation of yourself. Choose sovereignty, or continue as the man who bends, pleads, and collapses. Choose to transform jealousy into mastery, comparison into fuel, silence into command, and presence into inevitability. The ice-cold answer Nietzsche offered is not advice, it is a law of existence. A man who masters himself renders all tests impotent. All rivals fade. All praise, whether for him or for others, cannot touch the immutable throne of his being. The choice is yours, but the battlefield waits, and the moment to embody this truth is now.